Hello, everyone. This is JT Keating, the Vice President of Product Strategy for Zimperium. I would like to welcome you to the latest in our series of the mobile sins, the mobile security sins that CISOs need to make sure that they don't commit either on purpose or on accident. And so today is going to be an interesting one, especially in light of some of the recent news that has been out, which we'll talk about here in a quick second. This is the sin of not protecting the devices of executives in particular, and as a result of doing that, exposing things like their location, calendar, contacts, even microphones, and all the rest of that fun stuff. So we're going to dive in, and we're going to have a conversation about this. The usual perfunctory commentary, which my colleagues love to give me a hard time about using that word, but it makes mom happy as an English teacher. The slides will be available to anybody that's looking for it. We'll have an archived version of the webinar put up on our site within a day or so. And please use the Q&A section. We try to keep these to about 20 minutes of content. We try to really be respectful of your time. And then questions, if you have them, great. If not, we don't need to make them up or anything. We'll give you some time back. So, and please do not use the chat capability. We've had some difficulties with it. So even if you have technical issues, please just drop that in the Q&A and we'll be able to hopefully address it there. So with that, like I said, we're in the middle of a series of what are these 7 deadly sins of mobile security. This one is talking particularly about the main folks. And of course, the interesting thing about executives is executives oftentimes are the ones that have the most authority, the most to lose, and yet are the ones that oftentimes will be the ones to ask for the greatest amount of flexibility and leniency. So they have the most to lose, and yet they're the ones who ask for the most flexibility, making them a huge target, of course. So we always like to do this. We always like to level set because, a lot of people don't have, which I'm going to talk about here in a second, they don't have any visibility currently on a lot of mobile devices. And so they're like, well, how big of a risk is it really? Well, here's the simple punchline. Then we'll get into the details. 100% of our customers have detected mobile threats. Now, I've been spending a lot of time with some of our partners, in particular Sprint, who spends a lot of time in the SMB market, and I've been reminded that it's really business customers, and the statement still holds. So it's not just mega enterprises. Even when we do all of our research all the way down to our SMB customers, we're detecting threats in 100% of our customers. So the fact is that threats are absolutely real. And part of what this is, and there's been a sea change, is realizing that mobile is just another endpoint. If you have patient data sitting on a laptop, it's no different than patient data sitting on a tablet. If you need to protect it in one, you need to protect it in the other, which leads to the next point. And the next point is one that frankly, as we've had this sea change, which has moved from mobile security being kind of the domain of just the mobile IT guys to now the endpoint security guys. The next point is the one that has endpoint security guys writhing in their seats quite often, and that's this. All of the endpoint security that we've actually put out, according to all the statistics today, cover 40% of the devices that are accessing the enterprise, accessing the network, which means 60%, which are mobile devices, have no visibility, no security at all, and yet are sitting there in the hands of executives. In this particular case. So you can see why the security guys would be writhing, because all of a sudden they're like, oh my goodness, I've got this device, it's in the hand of an executive, they're the admin of this, it's spending 80% of the time outside of my network and I have no visibility on top of it. So clearly that's why we're having these sessions to explain the nature of all of this. So it's important as we dive into this though to realize mobile is another endpoint, but it is different, and so are the attacks, than traditional. So one of the things as we lay out the 4 primary attack vectors on mobile, going right to left, in traditional endpoints, apps have the ability to go sideways through other apps. In mobile, all apps are in what are called containers, which means that they have to stay within their own little bucket unless they break out. Now, the laws of security are time tested. One is the concept of land and expand. The bad guys are going to find the weakest link and make their way in. Today, with 60% of the endpoints being mobile, in the hands of users like executives who are not technically sophisticated and make really bad decisions, spending 80% of the time outside of the network, mobile devices are the prime target to land and then expand. The second time-tested law of security is persistence. For as long as there's been cyber attacks, when a bad guy takes over a device, he wants to do everything he can to remain persistent as long as humanly possible and to be able to weaponize and cause chaos. The only way to do that in mobile is to actually compromise the device, the far left, to elevate privileges, to gain root access. I'm actually going to show you a demo of this here in a quick second. So if you just stay within a container of an app, all you can really do is deal with the user within that app. So malware, malicious apps in mobile, it's really untargeted, meaning not targeting a specific corporation. And it's important to note, Zimperium is built from the very beginning to protect enterprises, protect businesses. That's our job, not to protect consumers. So we basically said, okay, we need to protect against targeted attacks where somebody's saying, I want to target XYZ company, right? Malicious apps are all about fraud. They can deliver an exploit to compromise the device. And a lot of them have that capability, but it's not targeted and it's not efficient. One thing the bad guys are is efficient. Think of the hackers as running a business. They think about ROI. They think about how efficient can they go after somebody. If somebody was targeting XYZ company, they're not going to drop an app in the App Store and hope that somebody from XYZ company downloads it. It's a bad business model. And they're bad dudes. They're not bad at running their business. Now, the second step up from that is phishing. Phishing is a major issue in mobile. 90% of breaches, according to Verizon and a whole bunch of other sources, all started with a phish. And now 2/3 of emails are being read on mobile devices. And then to make things worse, users are significantly more likely to read their personal email on a mobile device, which quite often is where they're going to get phished, which has nothing to do with any corporate protection that's been put in place. So mobile phishing is a real deal. But again, it's untargeted in terms of the company itself. It can, as soon as that website starts processing, deliver an exploit which can compromise the device. But again, it's not as efficient. We knew from the very beginning, and the data has proven it out, that the bad guys are very good at what they do. And if they're going to target XYZ company, what they're going to do is they're going to set up a fake Wi-Fi network right across from XYZ's headquarters in a coffee shop or someplace. And when they do it, and I'm going to show you a demo of this here in a quick second, they're able to immediately find somebody from XYZ and compromise the device. The data proves 90% of the targeted attacks start with a network attack. That's going to be critical when it comes to how do you solve the problem, which we're going to come back to. But it's just important to kind of know across the board, here's the ways that people do it, but ultimately they're after the device. So today we're talking about execs, contacts, calendars, the camera, the microphone, all the stuff that you really don't want to be compromised that is sitting in their pocket or sitting on the boardroom table while they're having a conference. So what are we talking about that? Well, we did a kind of a corollary webinar series just a little while back of, what were the top 5 reasons that hackers wanted employees' mobile devices? And clearly their goals are threefold. We want to attack mobile devices we can get credentials we can potentially use to further penetrate into a company. We would like to get data, any data that's on there or any data that it's got access to. And then there's weaponization. Again, if you're persistent, if I've taken over that device, I don't have as much control over that device as the end user. I have way more control, which I'm going to show you here in a quick second. So hackers want these devices for these 3 things. And related to a lot of this And to this conversation directly, especially when it comes to executives and people that have access to really important information, they want to conduct reconnaissance as well. They want to be able to turn on microphones. Imagine if you can turn on a microphone in the middle of a board meeting, right? They want to be able to take pictures. They want to be able to take pictures off the phone. They want to be able to know where people are. They want to know who they're meeting with. All of this information, their contacts, all of this information is hugely important, hugely important. So here's an example that's a geopolitical one because it helps explain this whole thing. A few years ago, the Russian folks got in trouble because they took what's called a rogue access point, a Pineapple, and they bolted it onto a drone. And they flew that drone around a NATO base. And as you can see from the headline here, 4,000 soldiers' phones connected to this fake Wi-Fi network, thinking they were talking to the NATO network. Cameras were turned on, troop movements were recorded, microphones were turned on. In the end, the only reason that Russia ended up getting caught at the time, because it didn't have protection like ours out there yet, was because they started sending fake orders. But imagine, here's an example where, in a true geopolitical sense, it's out there. Now, more recently, I'm sure you've all heard the headlines, and we're talking about executives, and we're talking about the impact that it could have if somebody gets on these. Mr. Bezos allegedly was hacked. His mobile device was hacked, allegedly from folks in Saudi Arabia. Now, everybody that knows about this story today has been focused on the personal side of things. They released, or they were blackmailing, they attempted to blackmail him with photos and texts and stuff with a lady he was involved with. So that's been what everybody's been focused on, as you can even see, private information and things on those lines. As I'm going to show you here in the demonstration, simple fact is, if somebody takes over an executive's phone, the executive's mobile device, it's not just going to be his personal stuff. I'm waiting for the next Amazon announcement, the next earnings announcement, because I guarantee they're going to have to put in as a risk part of that financial report that the CEO's phone, think about Mr. Bezos and think about everything that was on his phone. All the Amazon emails, all the attachments, any access that he had, any passwords that he had, that is now out there in the hands of somebody. And a lot of people say, okay, yeah, but that's Jeff Bezos. I'm not Jeff Bezos, right? True. But again, 100% of customers have been attacked. And obviously, executives are a primary target of what people are after. So I always think a demo is worth 1,000 words. We've used variations and parts of this demo in different things. But basically, here on the left, we've got, in our case, an executive's phone. We're going to make an executive's phone. On the right side, you've got the hacker's little world. On the top, initially, you're going to have the fake Wi-Fi network that the phone's going to connect to, because as smart as smartphones are, they're very stupid when it comes to the networks they connect to. The phone will introduce itself to any network that's on its list of networks it's talked to before. It's up to the network to say, yes, that's me, right? Then that upper part is going to actually be, when we've exploited it, the capability that we have to own that device. When I said a device exploit was key, and we're going to show you some of the things that can occur. So I'm just going to kind of start running this through. And right now, the one on the right, you see the Acme network. It has not been turned on yet. The Pineapple has not been turned on. On the left, the phone's looking for various different networks that it's familiar with. Now that the Pineapple is turned on, the Acme network will show up. And since it's connected to Acme before, the device connects. It's literally that easy. Now, what we do for this demo so that you can actually see it is we're actually tricking the user into installing an update. He works for Acme Company. And when he goes to access Acme, it says, hey, you need to update your client. But don't get confused. We're doing that just so you can see a demo, so you can actually see something happen. But machine speed, attacks occur at machine speed. All the stuff we're showing here does not, once the person owns you on the network, this stuff doesn't necessarily have to be done manually like we're showing somebody do. I mentioned earlier with a phishing site, as soon as somebody hits a website, that can take advantage of a browser to deliver an exploit, etc. So we're just making it very, very visual. Now that they've done this, you can see that the bad guy now has root access on this device. Now, it's also important to note, this is an iOS device, okay? We could have done Android, but a lot of people are like, oh, iOS is bulletproof because Apple's done a great job on the App Store. But the fact is, it's equally susceptible. So I'm going to pause here for a quick second because I want to make sure that we don't miss this. What's over here on the right now is the entire, we just specifically said the Wi-Fi keychain, but it could have been any keychain. I mentioned that once the hacker controls the executive's device here, they have more capabilities than the executive does, including all of the encryption keys. So anything that's encrypted on this device, including keychain, all the passwords, and in this case it was the Wi-Fi ones, which could include the corporate Wi-Fi, which would enable us to go into the corporate Wi-Fi, but it also could be all passwords. It could be their passwords to Salesforce. It could be their password to the financial system, whatever the case may be. So again, the hacker right now has more control over this device. And as we're talking about, we wanted to do like some surveillance type stuff. Well, one of the things the hacker can certainly do is take screenshots of anything that's out there. Let's say that was a document about a merger that he was reading at the time. Take a copy and it shows up and it's downloaded as an attachment to the bad guy. And we also talked about surveillance, right? What about turning on the camera? I think that's a good thing to do. So we can take pictures in the camera, or we can turn on the microphone. In this case, it just shows the picture of the camera that we were using in the demonstration. So it's not particularly exciting, but it could have been just about anything else, right? And then I'm not going to go through the rest of this because we did an email talking about the deadly sin of taking over email. But here's an important thing, really important thing to note. If somebody has taken over an executive's device, in addition to getting access to their contacts, which is in a folder, which you can download immediately, in addition to the cameras and the pictures and all of that stuff, all of the attachments that are in their email are in a single folder that can be downloaded. Another thing about taking over the executive's devices and having access to the contacts and access to the emails and everything, the executive is now the perfect person to do spear phishing. So if you want, go back and watch the email webinar and you can see the rest of the demo. But basically what it comes down to is we take all the attachments, drop them in a file as a bad guy. And then what we do is we actually start sending emails. Now imagine if Mr. Bezos, if it hadn't been publicly that everybody knows his phone had gotten hacked, he's sending emails to people asking for the quarterly announcements before they come out, asking for that we're talking about doing with a company nobody knows anything about, or accessing a new area as Amazon continues to expand, right? So a huge issue of compromising executive's device is the ability to take over their email. The fact that we made it way longer than it needed to be just to show you visually. Then the question though is, okay, so what do we do about it, right? Well, I'm gonna go back and talk about this. It's critical. 90% of targeted attacks start with a network attack. What that means is 9 times out of 10, the bad guy owns the network. And Zimperium knew this from the very beginning, which is why of all the major solutions that are out there, we're the only ones who started by saying, you know what? The sole objective is to compromise the device, elevate privilege, exploit the device, compromise the device. And the number one way to get there, the bad guy owns the network, which means you have to do 100% of your detection on device. We started that way from the very beginning. Gartner has now caught on to that as well. And you can see here, detention split between cloud, blah, blah, blah. The on-device agent, this is about as strong a word as you're going to get from Gartner about recommending approach only one of the vendors is taking of the major vendors, right? On-device provides better likelihood of protection persisting over a compromised network. If the bad guy owns the network, which he does 9 times out of 10, he's not going to send you to the cloud to detect him. Matter of fact, the very first thing he's going to do is truncate that. So what you need is on-device detection. Zimperium has one engine, it's called Z9, and it detects device network phishing, malicious app attacks on device, both known and unknown. There's 2 different ways to roll it out. The first one is a product called ZIPS, which stands for Z Intrusion Prevention System. That actually, if you're trying to protect the device and the data that's on that device 100% of the time, next generation endpoint protection, if you will, for mobile, that's ZIPS. If, however, you have a mobile app and you want to protect that app and its session, we have a very small SDK that can drop in a matter of minutes into any mobile app. In that case, you're not trying to protect the device 100% of the time. You're trying to protect the app and the session that that app is having on a device that you quite often don't own. So an example I use quite often is we have a major financial institution that's using ZIPS to protect a couple 100,000 of its employees, and they're using ZApp to protect millions of mobile banking users. And by the way, they're also using ZApp to protect some BYOD use cases where they have internally focused, employee-focused mobile apps, because that was part of their BYOD initiative as well. So, and then both of those, without getting into super product detail, because anybody that wants to talk about our products, obviously, we're more than happy to talk to you about it. A huge advantage of doing our detection on device, in addition to the ones I already talked about, is we don't have to lock our console into a single cloud solution. The folks that are doing 100% of their detection in the cloud, they had to pick one because the console and the cloud are locked together, right? With us, completely cloud agnostic. You can do on-prem if you want, doesn't matter to us. Behind the Z console, which is our cloud-based management console, is a capability called Z3A, which stands for Advanced App Analysis. There's a huge chunk of apps that are in your environment, on your devices, accessing your network, that might be very legitimate apps, but because of the way they've been constructed, they have huge privacy and security risks inherent in them. So Z3A helps us flag those, and then we can create custom policies to decide what you're going to do with them. Behind Z Console, we integrate with the largest set of EMMs out there. We're also the only ones that can do multiple EMMs in a single tenant. And then we have excellent forensics, which can be dropped into any SIM solution that you've got. So I will pause there and see if we have any questions, and hopefully this has been useful for you. Thank you very much for your time. So I don't see any questions, but thank you all very much. If you do have any questions, even after this, feel free to ping me if you'd like, jt.keating@zimperium.com. But otherwise, I would like to thank you for your time and hope you have a great day.